Hey there, hope you're doing well. In this podcast, let's talk about again. This is a video podcast, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to show anything other than me just talking. So the audio is probably just good enough. But if you still want to watch the video, you can. I'll include a link in this podcast to the video version, right? Because if you're on Amazon Music or something or Spotify, you wouldn't be able to see the video version of this. Okay, so in this podcast, I want to essentially talk about. People have asked me time and again, okay, what is it? What are some of the initial things that you have to do when you start building a new product, right? And it doesn't matter what it is that you're building. It could be some application. Doesn't matter what business problem it's solving. It doesn't matter whether it's using all of the cloud services or using some of what's in the cloud, whether it's mobile or web or API or backend or middleware or front end or integration. It doesn't matter what it is. The general approach is reasonably applicable to all aspects of software engineering, at least in my opinion. So if let's say you have an idea and you want to get started with building something, how might you go about that, right? So let's talk about that a bit. And if it sounds obvious to you, then it's great. Maybe there's not a whole lot you might learn from this podcast. But trust me when I say that even for folks who've done this for a while, who've been building software for a living for a number of years, not all of this is very clear to them. And I can tell you because I've had people call me, hit me up on LinkedIn all the time, really small companies or individuals who just have a little bit of money who want to build something or who have an interest in building software. I've talked to folks from almost all walks of life over these years. And I've worked with a good number of them. Certainly not all of them, as many as I would have liked to work with, but a good number of them. And all of this is a sort of a summary of that experience. I've had people call me and ask me to build, and I'm not even kidding when I say that. Someone called me like years ago and said, "Hey, I see that you build products, do that for a living. I'm not an engineer, but I have an idea. And I want to see if you can help me," right? I was like, okay, what might that be? And one of the examples was, this is how I'm paraphrasing what they had said, but this is not too far off. They told me that, hey, I want to build something like Uber with just 10 more features, right? Something like Uber, that's not just it, but 10 more features. It depends on how you look at it. I think it's a great example, and a great place to start this conversation in this podcast, right? If I have to speak about music, I love music, but I have no clue, right? I couldn't tell one instrument from the other. If you played something, I couldn't tell the sound is coming from a cello or a harp or a violin or a viola, right? But I love music. Similarly, there's people who love software. They just don't happen to be in this business. And so you don't expect, it's unreasonable to expect people to know what it takes to build something, right? Doesn't matter if it's small, medium, big, or super big. So my question to the person was, hey, do you have a sense of what it might take to build something like Uber? Let alone the 10 other features that you have to add on top of Uber, but just to build Uber, right? So it was a conversation, but it was a little bit of an educational conversation, me trying to explain what it might take to build software. And then I asked, like, how much money do you have? And it was very little bit, right? It's just they had saved up some money and they want to do something, but then they unfortunately did not realize what it actually cost to build software. And it's because, a lot of us have ideas and some of them are great ideas, but I think it comes down to execution, right? Even the most brilliant of ideas, if we don't have the ability to execute on them or have the money to support it, it reminds me of a Dilbert's strip I read a long time ago. I think it was along the lines of, hey, he gets up and I think the person says, I have a brilliant idea. And then the other party goes, that's great. Do you have the money to invest in that idea? And they're like, no, I don't have the money. And then the follow-up question is, okay, do you have the technical know-how? So you know how to actually get this thing done? They're like, yeah, not really, right? And then the response is, if you have an idea, but don't have, you neither have the money nor the know-how technical know-how to implement it, then in pure economic terms, what it's called is actually nothing, right? I think I may even have that printed out on one of my walls here. Obviously, it's Dilbert, so it's even more beautiful than I recapped here. It's more succinct, but you get the idea. So ideas are, you get the idea, but moving past. So ideas are good. We all need ideas to build what we need to be able to build. But unfortunately, they're not good enough, right? Not even close. how you take an idea, because you talk I mean, on a daily basis, I think we think of like, I can tell you that we think of like three different ideas, right? Maybe two, right? But certainly not less than that. So over a period of time, during a year's worth of, if you take a year, we probably have hundreds of ideas. Some of them are worth even jotting down and taking, maybe spending a little more time, an hour or two, thinking more about it. The rest of them, no. After like 20 minutes, you're like, yeah, this thing sounded great on minute one, but now it doesn't make any sense, right? Or somebody's already solved this like 10 years ago. So a very small percentage of those ideas actually become meaningful, and then we spend a little bit more time on those ideas. And they're ideas we've entertained for a whole day and a half, talking at length to go into a lot of detail. And then at the end of those sessions, that lengthy session, we realize that, what, this was great. Maybe that's still not a bad idea, but maybe it's not what we can do today at this point of time. Maybe that's not our priority. Maybe it doesn't gel well with the rest of what we're trying to do in the company. Or maybe flat out, no, it's not viable. Maybe it's too expensive. Maybe it doesn't make sense. Whatever it is, we spent like good 10 hours. We'll table it. If things change, we'll come back, revisit that later, right? And then there are this small percentage, maybe maybe a 0.5% of the ideas, right? If I say hundreds of ideas, we actually seriously take upon 2 or 3 of them to discuss more about those ideas. And that's what happens. That's literally what happens, right? Because not every idea is good, not every idea is viable, not all viable ones are doable, if there's even a difference between those two terms. So you then figure out in the context of your team, your skills, your interests, what is it that you can actually even build. And then you go to the next part, which is execution, which is obviously the chunk of it, right? And then after that comes selling. So we went live a year and a half, maybe a little bit more ago. We continue to improve our services in the company. We're building more products, but at the same time, one of our challenges is also sales, right? Because it's not our cup of tea. We are engineers, we're developers. We know how to build stuff. Selling it is a different beast altogether. We're just learning, right? Live and learn. So the thing is, so I've tried to explain to the person who called me about Uber plus 10 features that it's not. And then they were like, yeah, I get it now, right? And that one might be a dramatic example, but trust me, I've had a lot of people reach out to me with a lot of ideas, which not all of them made sense to me, so I didn't want to participate in them. And in other cases, they didn't have the money to invest in the idea, so they wanted me to be like a co-founder or a CTO and help out, but I would have to do that in lieu of something else that I'm doing, so it has to be a whole lot better than the ideas we have, which they were not, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, if you have an idea, the more you have, the merrier, right? But start jotting it down. If you're a visual person, draw some diagrams, right? Go to Miro or go to mind map, or whatever it is that makes sense to you. Visualize that. That's your cup of tea. But if you like words, put that in a document, Google Doc or something. Maybe an infographic if you like a combination of those two, and see if that makes sense. Socialize the idea with your family, people you trust, with your immediate family, extended family, or friends. Folks obviously that you can trust, right? And see if that makes sense. Maybe you learn more by having those types of conversations, right? Do a bit of research. I wouldn't recommend that you go entirely with market research, because isn't it Ford who said that if you had asked customers what they wanted, they would have said that they wanted fast horses and not cars. So yeah, sometimes you have to think ahead of the customer. So get a vibe, get a sense of what the market might need. But if you are running into a problem that you don't find an easy solution to, then that's a good thing that you can build a solution, right? It takes time to get to where you want to be, but you've got to make these iterative steps. But try to document it, because even recently someone reached out to me with an idea which they hadn't even thought through. 2 minutes into the conversation, I was like, hey, how is it different from something else that we've all been used to in the past on the product, or a requirement that's very obvious that somebody else has solved years ago? And then their response was, oh, you know what, I've not gone into that level of detail. But that was like 2 minutes into the conversation. It's not even that much detail, right? So I think you need to hash this out. Be extremely clear with what is it that you want to see. Sort of close your eyes and look ahead, right? Imagine that you've already completed that project, completed that application, that service, that API, that schema, and ask yourself what it could look like, or what it should look like, or what is it looking like to you in your imagination, and did it actually solve the problem that you thought that you were setting out to solve? Many a times you'll realize that is not the case, so you're gonna have to rethink your idea, hash it out, just make it solidify that idea. And that's, you got to do that stuff before you even entertain the conversation of building something. Or, I mean, unless if you're the developer yourself, sometimes it's easy for us to just write some code, try it out, and then see if that makes sense. So if that's quicker than hashing out the idea, then more power to you, right? We do that quite often as well. Write something, write an API, build a couple of pages, and just get the sense of what it is, and then see if it makes sense, whether it should be integrated into an existing product, should it be a different product, are we solving a different problem? So maybe it's not fully functional code, but it's not pseudocode either. It does work. It's ugly. It's obviously not production code. It could be one file with a lot of lines in it. It doesn't matter, but it gives you a way to visualize it. So if you can visualize code, go down that road. If you visualize, you're better with diagrams, go with diagrams. But make sure you have clarity in what you're trying to do before you set out to doing it, and certainly before you spend money doing it, right? And by money, I just don't mean paying somebody else. Like if I were to do something, it's me taking my time to doing that instead of doing something else. So there is a sunk cost, right? There's opportunity cost of not having done this other thing. That is also cost. I don't always realize it, almost never realize it, to be honest with you, because you don't realize that your time also costs money. Because you're not charging yourself, but that not may or may not be the correct approach, right? So you've got to make sure you do use your time wisely, right? It's a finite resource, needless to mention. And then once you've gone through those ideas, and you find one that is of more of interest to you, more of an interest to you than other ideas, then you entertain that a bit more, right? Say, okay, how do I want to take it to the next step? Do I create issues? Do I create, cards? How do I want to track them? Don't go to the nth level of detail, because like 10 years ago when I thought through my first idea, which is very different from the Snowpal product, I had gone to the level of detail where I'm not even kidding, I had created like 550 or 600 actual Jira. That was the time when I used to like and use Jira. No, certainly not anymore. So 600 issues before I even wrote a line of code, right? But having done that in the past a few times, I was able to create those 600 issues by sort of copy pasting and templating and whatnot within like a 6-hour window. But it's still 6 laborious hours of creating those issues. And then a week later, I realized, you know what, maybe this is not what I want to actually spend my time building. What happens to those 600 issues, right? It just sits there. And then you don't use the Jira anymore, so it's pretty much gone, right? You don't have any subscription or stuff. So take iterative steps, organic, keep it small, write up 10 issues, 20 issues, and then start working towards those issues. Unless you have confidence that you've actually nailed the idea and you know exactly what to do, and that will happen once you've started building more applications, then maybe you can spend a little more time initially creating and documenting it to that level of detail. So now you got the issues. What do you do next? Create a basic app, right? Create a repo. Could be a single repo, even if you're doing microservices and micro frontends and all the great architecture that you definitely do want to have, a scalable, performant, extensible, maintainable, manageable architecture. Rome was not built in one day, right? So you just start with a simple app, right? One repo. Doesn't matter whether you like JavaScript, Ruby, or TypeScript, right? Or C# or Java or Python. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever your interest is, start there. Build something. If it's UI, then maybe you want to draw out something quickly. A lot of times we just draw it out on iPad and we draw these hand-drawn diagrams because using OmniGraph and other things takes a lot of time. Sure, you can use Figma. That will save you time for the CSS, but if you already have some CSS, you have an existing app, like in our case, we have a lot of pages, a lot of code, and we can start with what we have and then build upon that. Or if you have somebody who's a Figma expert, use them to doing this. But again, don't spend too much time creating this UI and UX before you actually start realizing that in code, right? You want to do it very iteratively. So whatever works best for you, just do it. Create that app, get it out there, hand draw the diagrams if it's UI or mobile, and then share it, socialize that with your team, have them comment on it, make any adjustments even on pen or on pencil on the iPad, and then you have a UI that you actually want to work towards, right? Make sure you iron out the UX as well, and then you start building that stuff. Again, build one page or one component, one little thing. I mean, sometimes you build out huge design systems, with a lot of beautifully reusable components, except that none of them were actually even put into use. So when you use the first component, you realize, you know what, maybe I don't want this. Maybe all the storybook thing was not a great, the best use of time. And trust me, we've done that. We've spent time and then we realize, yeah, a design system is great and it's the right way to go. But if you want to build stuff quicker, you're very ambitious and you have fewer hours than what you want to get done, then some of this could be a cost. There's no right or wrong answer, whatever works best for you. If you like a design system, you want to create these storybooks and have these shareable components, that's obviously a nice, good way to go. Not always the case though. So create those components, start using them in small pieces. Whether UI developer, API developer, or your full stack developer, whatever it is, divvy it up, right? Divvy up the tasks so two people are not solving the same problem. Make assumptions. You have to make adjustments and it's all the time along the way. Don't try to spec out your endpoint so it's like picture perfect and then your UI team starts building it, and then if you make a tiny change they're not happy about it. Maybe with graph it's a little bit easier to make those adjustments, not so much with REST. So keep it really small, keep it really simple. You don't need 20 fields to prove that the page works, right? You just need 3 fields, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe not 1, because 1, you want the least number of those types of things so it establishes a design pattern or it breaks your existing design pattern or the one you're going to build. Sometimes too few might work. When you add the next thing, it starts falling apart, right? So it cannot be too small, doesn't have to be too big, doesn't have to be complete, but you got to find that sweet spot. There's no simple answer, right? That's where skills come into play, unfortunately or fortunately. So find that sweet spot, build it, then try to integrate it, deploy it, right? One of the initial mistakes we had made years ago was we spent like several weeks, I want to even say months, but I'm not willing to admit that, building pieces, but not actually deploying into our lower environments, right? It was running on our independent individual machines, great. And sometimes we didn't even do the integrations frequently enough. And again, DevOps has improved leaps and bounds over the years. Not everyone has the luxury and the time and money to invest in it, even if we wanted to. So we play the DevOps role as architects and developers and testers, and we sort of wear multiple hats. But I'm talking about days where DevOps is not a buzzword, not this useful, not this popular, not this mature. So we had not deployed it. So, and then when we went to deploy it after with a larger code base, we ran into more issues. So then we've learned, we live and learn. If you're, they say super smart, you learn from other people's mistake. If you're all right, you learn from your own mistakes. And if you're worse, you don't learn from your own mistakes either. I'm certainly not the first one. I wish I could be, but I don't want to be the last one either. I'm hopefully somewhere in between, right? We want to at least learn from our own mistakes, which I think we fairly do consistently. So deploy it. Get out there, right? So you can actually go and then, maybe you don't want to set up an SSL. Maybe that can wait a little bit. It's not a big deal, but just get the whole thing done outside of your EULA and terms of service and privacy policies and the GDPR and all of that stuff, which is no less important, but that can wait a little bit. Doesn't change your architecture necessarily, I would say, right? Sometimes it can, it might, but not all the time, not for all of us. So get it out there, deploy it so it's running. Now you have, even if it's not continuous integration or deployment, even if that takes a bit of time, even if you have to run some manual commands or set it up so it picks up your deployments to certain branches through Code Climate or Heroku or whatnot, just have the basic pipeline going. So you make code changes, you have a review process, you review the changes, you merge it, you have a branching strategy, you make code, incorporate code comments, and then it gets picked up for deployment. And then you kind of got the ball rolling. You can then essentially start building your features, focus on the more important items. But don't wait. You want to get the whole kind of little thing done so you feel like you've gotten, the weak, they say that the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. What you don't know, what you fear, what's more difficult, try to get that out of the way first. And then building more services, more pages, more components, it's all right. It's not rocket science, right? You just have to follow a design pattern. We haven't spoken much about design patterns. I'm a huge proponent of that, not just the Gang of Four or enterprise design patterns, or the ones you establish for yourself as a company, as a team, as an individual. Maybe this is long enough. I'm going to throw this part so I can talk about design patterns and the importance of design patterns and establishing them and communicating them with the rest of your team in the next podcast, right? And if I pitched the idea of our product Snowpal pitch at the beginning of the video, if I did, apologies. If not, definitely check us out. Bring more structure to your life, save time. Our product should help you save time, which means you get more of your life back to do much more fun things. Yep. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.